I'm currently working on my new animated production for Blender and making the production files available on my Patreon. I've just uploaded a typing demo file, which if we take a look, it's a very quick and very simple node tree made with the help of my Geometry Nodes advisor, Charon, who is available for work if you want to get in contact with him. Just head on over to curtisholt.online/services and I will connect you together. But anyway, it's a little typing demo. As you can see here, I'm playing it in cycles, so the playback is a little bit, choppy. But if I go into wireframe, we can see it happening here. And within a certain bound, we can define the text box in the modify settings. It's taking the input of a text file, and I will make this text file available to you within the folder. But you need to keep in mind that when you do open the blend file, you will need to go to the path value in the modifier / geometry nodes parameters, and then assign it to the text file included. And then it will play back at the speed you provide, and then you can modify the spacing and so on. So this is a tool I'm using to time things, and you can see other changes happening as well on the timeline where objects get swapped out with like different colored elements on the user interface. So there are already different solutions available for Blender relating to typing effects, but for me, I just needed something really simple for this. So if you want that file, it is now available on the Made Production files for Project Fold. If you go to curtisholt.online/members, you'll be able to find all of the stuff available, and then there's a shortcut here to production files, and then you will find the link to the correct Patreon post there. A small user interface asset library has also been added to the Patreon under the resource pack section. Now, this is content that's been siphoned from the Project Fold production, because if I just swap over to one of the Fold files, you can see I've been doing a bunch of user interface tests here. It's kind of pseudo 2D, 3D, but we can have things kind of, moving in and out of focus by the screen. But I've taken elements from this and put them into a more sensibly packaged format with individual objects marked as assets. So as I make more things for the production, I'll probably update this over time. There's some things I want to point out though, which you might find quite useful. So let's say I take something like the window thin border corner gradient one. So with this, you'll think, if I want to reshape this window, how do I do it? You could use like a sprite sheet method. What I actually do is wherever there's pixel data, I have structured the shape of the object to preserve those UVs. So we can grab some geometry and move it in a way where the repeatable pixels can stretch because they won't really make a difference to them, but the corner pixels and the sides look perfectly fine. So that's how you can take these elements and adapt them for your own scenes. So if you grab the right areas of the geometry, then you can rescale them like that. Obviously, this only really applies to the more square shape ones, but you can look at the elements where there are repeating pixels and think to yourself, you know what, something like this can probably be stretched indefinitely horizontally. So if I just do like a little split in the geometry and then another one, then grab one side and stretch that out, then you'll see how these things can be adaptable for your Blender scenes. So like I said, you'll find that on the members lounge under resource packs, and then we've got UI elements, Project Fold, and then here you'll get the post with the blend file attached. It will either be a blend file or a zip file, because in the future, if I add categories to it, if it gets large enough, then it'll probably be an asset library in the form of a zip file, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. All right, I've got a little test to do for the vocal processing. If it's good enough, then I'll keep it for the actual thing, but I'm still writing at the moment. And the goal will be maybe to get several people to do the lines so I can kind of splice between. Depends how much identity I need for this particular character. Okay.
I am relation. I am security. I am system. I am alone. Function. Change. Time. Space, sea, heat, death, sleep.
All right, let's see how that comes out. Right, vocal processing. I will probably put an extra thing on the Patreon with some extra detail about like the settings. Generally, all you need to know is I picked up the Wave Audio vocal bundle. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, Waves. This is not sponsored. This is just honestly something that I wanted to try because I will need it for a variety of things. But just to be transparent, there you go, vocal production. Obviously, things cost money. Right, but in the end, we get stuff like this.
You surf, fold. You see time.
Okay, nice. Although still some kind of phasing stuff I want to do. So again, I'll put extra details on the Patreon in regards to specific settings, but the main powerhouse here is the OVOX.
You.
Which again, so many features I still need to learn about, but...
You surf, fold, heat, death.
God, you can really punch it through. But one thing I can also do is I could likely associate these dials to the sliders that I've got in front of me. Then we can kind of modulate it as you go. But I'm not completely settled on the exact wording for this. There is potentially as well like a little bit of music maybe that might need to happen at the end if I'm gonna do it the way I'm thinking of doing it. I do have some old sketches that I could maybe have a little look at. Where are we looking? God, there's a lot of them. All right, so maybe I will try and get done with some of the writing for this section today. And then maybe I've got some extra footage from Space Engine to put up because I'm just having a look at modifying Earth at the moment for the period in time for the short. So let's get back to it. I just wanted to append that and say that yes, on the made production files, I've added a vocal processing for Crass PDF, which provides more details on the effects used to get the exact vocal processing sound. So if you want more details on that to see, you know, what order I've got effects in on Ableton and what the values are, what presets are started with, etc., then that PDF is available. Okay, also added to the made production files is a new tool I spent all of last night working on, which is a way of taking a spherical map, so it can be anything made with the shader editor. In this case, I'm just doing a test with cloud layers. So using the shader editor to create anything around a sphere, and then using the equirectangular camera mode to render out the cylindrical projection, and then converting that to Space Engine to be used, as you can see here, as a test case with the cloud layer. Obviously the clouds look terrible, but it's just a proof to show that it works. Now, Space Engine does have a cube map generation tool, but that's not exactly what it is. What it does is it takes an equirectangular image, and then it splices it down, first of all, into 6 master sections, representing like the 6 planes, or if you imagine this being like a subdivided cube, and then it takes those sections and then further splices them down into thousands of images representing different LODs, so levels of detail. Now, there are so many technicalities about this process. For example, you know, for the high resolution rendering, in this case 16K by 8K, the compositor cannot do GPU compositing, so I had to turn it to CPU. Also, when the Space Engine tool that is available in the documentation called CubeMap splices it down into the tiles, it does not necessarily automatically make those tiles correct for Space Engine, which means that sometimes the cloud layer just won't appear. So I made a couple of extra Python tools along the way, which are again packaged in the Patreon zip file to assist with that process. So this is what I would consider to be like proper R&D work here. In the zip file Space Engine Blender mapper, you've got the Blender file, which is the one we're looking at. You've got 2 Python files, one for converting the renders to a raw format, and then after using the Space Engine's CubeMap tool to split it down into tiles, I've got one here that converts PNGs to JPEGs and makes sure they're with a grayscale color space, because if you don't do that step, then they won't appear. But the Word file here is basically a proper text tutorial showing how that works. And a cool thing about that is, again, I'm now here in Space Engine, and we've got the Blender generated cloud map going on, which is just a very basic noise texture. So again, just imagine this is something far more complex and detailed, but now we can actually fly into it. And, you know, the level of detail adapts based on how far the camera is. And that means, you know, you can get under the layer, see it in the sky, which was kind of funny last night when I did it all hexagonal, because you could just see massive hexagonal lines going across the sky. But yeah, I just find it kind of interesting how I can now, you know, blend Blender work with Space Engine a bit more closely, and then I'll look at other ways to mod this. Not that I'll use Space Engine for every single type of space work, but again, I just think it's a very handy tool for scale and live rendering with the F9 feature, and for things like if I use a spacecraft mode, you can basically get things already moving like kind of on orbit or a direction you want with the rotational momentum, and just let that run as a render as well. So, you know, it's really handy. You can get some fast results with it. So yeah, that's been quite a lot of stuff added to the Patreon this time. Enjoy, and I will see you next time.